Hey guys! So after reviewing the Every Student Succeeds Acts page, I actually learned quite a lot. I took 10 pages of notes here. So that's really awesome. With assessments and the academic portion of it, they really wanted to focus on implementing the high quality academic assessments in math, reading, and language arts. So with that, I kind of interpreted that as the state testing that we currently have implemented in our school systems, with the one of each in grades 3 through 8 and then one's 9 through 12 state testing. So I like the option that it could be administered through a single assessment or through the multiple statewide assessments interim throughout the year. So I really like the emphasis that the state must provide those alternative assessments to those students with severe disabilities. I feel like a lot of times our students with severe disabilities, or even those with any disability at all, don't get as fair of an opportunity and a chance to do well on these assessments, or even to perform at all in some school districts. So I really believe that this Every Student Succeeds Act really focuses on benefiting the students with disabilities, as well as it actually benefits a lot of the kids who may just have poor academic performance as well. So the state must provide those alternative assessments, and I like that it prohibits the departments from imposing that cap on the percentage of students that they can take alternative assessments. I really like that it's holding the districts accountable for imposing a cap if necessary. They have to justify those actions of why they're doing things. I feel a lot of times that schools do things maybe for a very specific financial gain, or that benefits solely just them as well, and it's unfortunately not as focused on the students as it should be all the time. And with all of these legislations going on, it really helps to work towards benefits for our kids instead of higher administration and even teachers. Because a lot of times we're doing things that benefit teachers and not as many things that benefit our students. Sorry, my cat's meowing at the door because I locked him out. So I really like the incorporation to the universal design for learning as well, holding the accountability for the multiple means of engagement with the hows, whys, and whats of learning, with our representation, engagement, and the action and expression that we use throughout our teaching when we teach our students. But it's important that the universal design for learning benefits all of our students, especially the students that we have in inclusion classrooms, because a lot of times, since I work at the middle school level, there's not a lot of room for students with disabilities to have their own classroom with their own teacher, and it's not as an enclosed of an environment as maybe it should be for them. But there are so many different things that we can do to make the inclusion type classroom still beneficial to those students. So when it discussed the CEC, it transfers the authority for the accountability of the educators and the school improvement from the federal government to the local districts. So we're not controlled by a higher level of government anymore. It's really up to the schools themselves within each state to be able to do what they think is best for each student. And it provides so many different funds to be able to do that. And $15 billion in funds granted to those states, as well as additional grants when necessary, really leaves a lot of room for flexibility of what we can do with that money to help our students. And the idea under ESSA eliminated the federally mandated teacher evaluation system, which was getting in the way a lot of times, I think personally, of being able to educate our students with disabilities, because a lot of times that's based on performance. And if we're not able to show that, a lot of students with our disabilities, they don't necessarily directly affect the whole class doing poorly, but it makes it a little bit harder to show those high numbers all the time when we're trying to get students to get almost perfect scores, like 80s, 90s on all these math and ELA assessments. And a lot of times teachers feel that they're not given the opportunity to show that they're still working hard, even if the numbers aren't always there, especially with all the inclusion classes that we have. Because I know, at least from my student teaching experience, when I worked with my second placement, I was in a 7th grade math classroom, and I was in the special education team. So I had 7 periods of inclusion classes, but a lot of them were a majority of students that had special needs and different disabilities, a lot of times all mixed in with the same class. They weren't organized by class or anything like that. So I had to change my teaching style daily and alternate everything I was doing and collaborate with the other special education teachers. But there's only so many hours in the day. It felt like sometimes, you can't, Rome wasn't built in a day. You can't change all of these things to benefit these students to be academically successful with the numbers on the page necessarily for those assessments all the time, but that doesn't mean that you're not doing your job effectively as a teacher. So that's great that we're getting this legislation that backs us up a little bit more to be able to do that. And it also improves the options for gifted and talented students. So a lot of times they may feel kind of stuck in a classroom style, and we can do the best that we can as teachers to give them that extra additional instruction and give them that advanced learning experience if they would like to, but having the options available to better those experiences for them just really shows that we're working towards those goals to help our students more with disabilities, whether that's something that makes them perform better academically or slows down their performance academically in the process here. And I like that the states are providing performance reports for accountability. They're held accountable for that. So if the numbers aren't there, if there's something going wrong in a specific district or a specific state, that can be addressed right away because there are reports on that. You know, it's not lost in the distance per se. And students aren't just getting pushed through, and then being stuck academically later down on the road when it's maybe too late to make a change and help either the school district, the school, or a certain grade level with these kids. And they want to reduce the overuse of discipline practices that remove students from the classroom. I really believe in that. I don't believe in making a call to in-school suspension all the time and sending out a kid for a behavior problem. Because half the time when kids have disabilities, they also have a lot of behavioral problems as well. And a lot of that comes from frustration. That comes from not necessarily understanding the material right away and getting frustrated that maybe their peers in that inclusion style classroom are picking up things a little bit faster than they may. And so you're creating a little bit of a conflict with the defiance maybe a lot of times within the classroom, but that doesn't mean that that student's going to be any more successful if you send them downstairs to in-school suspension where it's just a bunch of distractions and they're getting behind on their work. So it's really important that we keep these kids in class, even if it's not the most productive class period all the time. When you're trying to manage everything and you're still trying to learn the best way to accommodate students, the best way to make sure that everybody is learning and it's a safe, comfortable environment, it's better to have all those students in there ready to try to achieve some growth rather than send them out of the room just to make the classroom more comfortable for the time being for some other students. And I also like that the schools are receiving assistance to reduce bullying and harassment, because a lot of times the students with disabilities, if they're in those inclusion style classrooms, you can't protect them really outside of the classroom. You can only see what's going on inside your classroom. So if schools are working collaboratively as wholes to alter the mindset of students about bullying, about harassment, I think it's really going to help make a change with the motivation among students and students' abilities to be more successful with their academics when they're working through things as well. I think that sums up a lot of what I read about here. Let's see. I like that the CEC guidelines with it ensure that children with disabilities have access to the general education system. We're not just separating the two from each other. Those kids that may struggle a little bit more are still having access to the same knowledge that each kid is learning within that grade level and within those subject areas. And it ensures access to accommodations on assessments, because I know a lot of times students may have those accommodations, but they're not always held when it comes time to take an assessment. I've seen that through subbing. I've seen that through observations with my Learn and Serve and with my student teaching, and it's not fair to every student. And so if there is legislation that's holding people accountable for that, that really makes all the difference from what we can do right now, starting right away with those kids. Everything is a long process with changing the way we're thinking about the education system, changing the way we're thinking about educating our students in inclusion style classrooms as well as outside of the inclusion style. But it really seems like we're doing some great things here, and I'm really thought-provoked by all the stuff that I read here, because I really enjoy watching any sort of improvement happen within our education system, because I'm really excited to be one of those teachers that makes a difference. So it's really great that legislation is going along with us, and I'm really glad I had the chance to examine all those different links for this article.